So, a couple of years ago, I turned 30. So I'm now 32. And a lot changed for me in my life. Some of the things that were my core values 5-10 years ago, all of a sudden weren't quite as valuable as they used to be. How I looked at the world changed a little bit. And I'm now trying to find out where I go in this next decade. I started hunting for the answer. I started looking at podcasts, articles, speaking to people, even speaking to therapists. And I started to realise that a lot of people felt the same way. Anybody who's followed Chris Williamson for a while in his podcast Modern Wisdom talks about the menopause, when guys do bodybuilding all the way through their 20s and then all of a sudden start transitioning into powerlifting, marathons or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And this is something I'd seen so often, that people changed a lot about their life when they hit 30. And this I thought was a great topic to get Rob back on the show to discuss in this week's episode. I, in the early part of my 30s, trying to find the plan for my next decade. Rob, coming to the end of his 30s and about to hit his midlife crisis at 40. In this episode, we talk about his 30s, we talk about what he has learned and his path across this decade, and I talk about some of the struggles that I am facing. We talk about training. Does it get harder to lose body fat in your 30s, or are there other things at play? We're talking about, does financial security, social media play an impact on this? And we talk about the mental health repercussions and how we can navigate this time. If you enjoy the show, please share on social media, tagging myself and Rob. And if you can leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, we would really appreciate it. But I will leave you with myself and Rob McGeary. So Rob, welcome back to the show again. Obviously, I don't know how you top an alien episode, but I thought this would be a topic that one thing we are both, I think, very passionate about these days is men's mental health and priorities for blokes. And I think this is a really, really, really good episode to talk about that. You know, I think this is interesting because it's something I think I'm still going through in terms of piecing together where my next steps are. And you're a little bit, let's say, wiser than me, shall we say, rather than older. So how, to go into this a little bit, how did you find leaving your 20s? Did things change for you much when you became 30?
So the 20s for me, the end of my 20s into my 30s were a massive, massive turning point, which I almost feel like I'm kind of repeating just over 2 months away from turning 40, right?
You're that close to 40? I thought it was a little bit further away.
40 in November.
Oh, mate, big piss up.
Terrifying. This one's terrifying. 30, I thought, that's a bit weird. It's kind of like halfway through your life. Nah, it's an easy one. But yeah, it was a turning point for me. This was kind of where I really doubled down on self-employment. Started my own boot camp business, was doing my own personal training, was running my own weightlifting school just as I turned 30. I abandoned one major relationship I was in. That's the wrong word to say. A major relationship I was in broke up. I didn't abandon it. That broke up.
What do you do with the children?
They're building rocket parts for space.
They work at Roswell.
They're mining the copper. They're happy. They're earning. So and it coincided with me really giving a fuck about my health as well. Like my late 20s is where I put on a lot of weight. And then around about 30 is where I was like, I feel horrible. I feel unattractive. I feel terrible. And that's when I kind of really, the focus for me changed. I was like, I'm not in my 20s anymore. This ain't going to be as easy. Because how many people you hear say, oh, they can eat whatever the hell they want and they just don't put any weight on. And then they're like under 25. Like, well, it's because the easiest fucking thing in the world, of course. But then, well, that was 10 years ago. It's not so easy for those people now. So it was kind of a bit of a turning point for me. And it kind of set me down the route of, whilst I'm looking after myself physically now, you then start discovering coaches talking about mindset, and that gets you into a bit more personal development and stuff like that. And it was weird. Like my first mentors, if you want to call them that, out in the fitness industry outside of who I was directly learning from, were American strength coaches. So your Joe DeFranco's, Louis Simmons, James Smith, the original James Smith, James Diesel Smith, Smitty, not the new mediocre.
Well, that's him never coming on the show.
Not that one. I every right, just don't have me at the same time. He's all right. Zach Evanesh as well. Zach Evanesh was a big one for me. Remember Zach Evanesh? I loved the way he trained. I loved the raw elements to it. Later down the line, he became mates with Ultimate Warrior. It was fantastic. I loved his stuff. And he was the first guy that started talking about the mindset side of training. And he was referencing, what do they call it? What was it? The Primitive Principle book. He was talking about Gary Vaynerchuk. He was talking about mindset stuff. And I think if I were to trace it back, I'd probably credit it to him. This sort of big shift for me, not just physically, but mentally as well. And Zach Evanesh appeared on Paul Mort's first podcast. And that's how I came across Paul Mort. And then, the story continues, shall we say. So I always looked up to those strength coaches because they were always that little bit older. And I loved hearing about their own training. I loved hearing about how they were training athletes, the younger guys. But I also loved watching Joe DeFranco's physical transformations and Zach Evanesh's dad strength, if you want to call it that. I mean, obviously, Louis Simmons is a completely different beast altogether. But even like your Dave Tates and stuff like that, it always interested me watching these guys and learning from them as older athletes or retired athletes. That was really, really interesting.
Did your training change from how you trained in your 20s, how you trained in your 30s? Because you're looking at a lot of strength stuff and a lot of bodybuilding stuff. And I presume that's probably because most guys train like that in the 20s because they want to pick up chicks, right? So I know you were recently single at this time, but did your training change from in your 20s to in your 30s, or did it really stay relatively consistent?
It did, because my training for my early 20s was to support my sprinting. I didn't really care about body composition then. I was lean because I was skinny. I was tiny, but I was sprinting a lot. I was lifting weights to get faster or to injury proof as well. Didn't really care about my diet that much, but I didn't really care about body composition either. I used to read all the bodybuilding mags and go to the supplement shops and talk to the geezer for hours. It was great. I loved immersing myself in that culture. But then round about the 30s is where I was really getting into, okay, well, I can't sprint anymore, but I can still Olympic lift. Like, I'm still pretty good at this. I know what I'm doing here, and I've got great contacts in the industry, and I love teaching people it. And that's all my training became. But I got stuck in this loop of, well, suddenly I'm a strength athlete. I don't need to worry about my body composition at all. I'm going to Bethnal Green, weightlifting club for 2 hours in the morning, going to McDonald's and having multiple double cheeseburgers, and then going again in the afternoon. Doesn't matter. I'm getting strong. Don't care. And I think this is a bad realm that a lot of these younger guys you're seeing who are super, super strong at bench and deadlift, and they just do not give a fuck about their body comp. They are fat. I don't care how strong they are. They are fat. And it's different from looking at some of these world's strongest men competitors, because you look at those guys are solid. Okay, they are big as well. Don't even compare them on a BMI scale. They are big, but you can see they're athletic at the same time. Whereas a lot of these other guys, okay, you turn around, they're doing 140 on the bench, but fuck me, their guts above the the level of the bench they get in the bar up to.
The 3 flights of stairs, they're knackered.
That bit always worries me, is seeing these guys go that route, because I've been that route and you end up really out of shape. And it's not good for you. It's not good for your athletic development. Your joints hurt. You sleep shit because the food you're eating is so nutritionally sparse. And I got easily stuck in that realm. But at the same time, when that relationship broke up, this is when I kind of started getting into the men's forums and the manosphere, if you want to call it that. I was like, I've got to make myself as attractive as I can. Okay, it's cool that I can lift heavy weight overhead, but fucking look at the state of me. I'd see photos of myself on stage playing with my band and go, fuck, I look terrible. My face is round, gut sticking out through my t-shirt. And so I just went on not on a bender, but I did everything I could to start dropping weight, which included a tiny bit of keto, a smattering of keto, which did fuck all.
Salt Bay of keto.
A Salt Bay of keto, which did fuck all, because I was just like, I really want to eat dessert. So I made keto cheesecake, and I went, this is shit. I'm getting real cheesecake.
Absolutely not worth it. I think one of the worst, I know it's a tangent from the topic, but I think it's quite interesting. The worst diet I ever did is one that sounds really good on paper. The Ultimate Diet 2.0 is in Lyle's diet.
Oh, like McDonald's,
And you do like your protein sparing modified fast, so like low carb, low fat, like 5 days a week, and then you do like a big 2-day massive like ice cream, donuts, desserts, everything. And don't be wrong, I looked so much better from it. Like it really works. But you feel, even if you don't touch it up with alcohol, you feel every Monday you've got a hangover. That big separation from really low calories to everything. You just feel like comatose. It's not pleasant. And that's only the closest. Well, I have done keto, but obviously, I tended to refeed out of it, which wasn't keto. But so your training was a little bit almost the opposite of way most people go, right? You went harder into the bodybuilding thing when you turned 30. But you see it all the time with people that men go into bodybuilding in their 20s and then they all do like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, or they all start running marathons in their early 30s. Why do you think this is such a common thing? Why do you think guys completely change their training when they hit 30?
I think it becomes a case of a lot of guys. So I was sprinting. I didn't know, okay, some of my mates played football, five-a-side at the weekend. I didn't know anyone else out of my peer group that was doing anything competitive. So I think there is that element of it. You get guys, especially the distance and the triathlete guys, that will hit that 30, almost becomes like a miniature midlife crisis. Let's call it a third life crisis, where instead of jumping on a motorbike or getting a shit ton of tattoos or running away to Vegas with a 20-year-old hooker, which I still want to do when I'm 40, they instead go, right, let's get the gates analysed at the running shop, and let's spend 700 quid on shoes, and we'll get the Garmin, and we'll get the heart rate monitor strap as well. And they go all out buying all the kit they need for their marathon or their triathlon, and then that becomes their identity. It's all they ever post about online is whatever race, or it's a photo of them in the park run in the vest and whatever. And I think it's a good thing. I'm not knocking those guys. It's a good thing that they have something to put their energy into, and it is an exercise, and it's not detrimental to their body composition, and not necessarily that detrimental to their hormone balance, although in a way it also could be. And it gets them competing, and it gets them out socializing as well. So in a way, it's a good thing. But obviously, you and I are big believers that men need to lift weights, and actual weights, not triathlon injury-proof weights, which half the stuff ain't fucking doing anything.
I think there's also an element of like, when you're young, so much of your life revolves around going out, meeting people of the opposite sex, and looking a certain way, and really caring about what your body composition looks like, because you're still trying to figure out who you are. And your identity is attached to all these different things, like how you look. And then when you get to 30s, most people realize that their identity is between lots of different things. So the value and priority of looking that good, you still want to look good, but looking shredded isn't quite the same way as it was before. So you don't have that pull. I think some people, if they're really into bodybuilding, for me, I'm almost in a way going through this, in like that drive to be thick skin lean isn't what it was 5 years ago. I did it last year, so I've done it since being 30. I'll do it again, but it isn't like it used to be. So almost I'm looking for something to give my bodybuilding a driving force. If I go and play rugby, I'm getting stronger for rugby, and look, I'll look better as a consequence. It's a byproduct rather than now the end goal. If I go and do powerlifting or whatever else, whether it's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I can then tailor my training to a deadline. And I think maybe guys they get bored of what they've done before. And if you don't have a real why anymore, you now need to find your new why. Yeah,
exactly. And it's I mean, something has to change at some point. Let's say you're a super, super smart kid, and in your 20s, you started doing 5-3-1, ultimate progressive overload program. And you just kept doing it consistently, and you didn't. Okay, by the time you hit 30, you'll be strong as fuck. You'll be probably pretty jacked. But there must be some element of boredom. There must be. How can you actually write a training program out that you're not going to, that's going to work, that's going to be amazing, but you're not going to be bored of in some point later down the line? That's why during lockdown, okay, just out of necessity, I started playing with my kettlebells and things like that again. And I really got into it. But part of it was, I feel like I'm doing something a bit more athletic than German body composition and several machines. You know, I actually feel like I'm moving my body how it's meant to. Some people go too far down that rabbit hole and go, well, you have to do all kettlebells and it has to be mobility stuff and it has to be weird sticks and fucking slam balls and shit like that now. And that becomes the training modality and it's functional and this is what you should be doing. But I don't know, I kind of almost enjoy locking into a Swiss machine and pressing 60 kilos overhead.
I hate the term functional. I was chatting to a colleague of mine recently, and he's worked in a few gyms in Hong Kong, and the guys, a few of the gyms he's worked for, hated leg extensions because they weren't functional, right? They tried everything in the world to avoid this, right? But so they train VMO with like bands and stuff. Like, you know, you're doing knee extension, right? You know your knee is a hinge joint. The function of your knee is a hinge joint. So surely the leg extension is the most functional thing you can do for your knees.
It's so done. And it all depends what circles you move in. The amount of CrossFitters I worked with that what do they call it? Globo gym. You go to any gym that's not a CrossFit gym, it's a Globo gym because it's got machines in it. Granted, in the UK, we don't actually have Globo gyms. That was a chain, you fucking morons. But
is that actually a chain? Isn't Globo Gym from Dodgeball? We're
better
than you, and we know it.
It's Dodgeball, isn't it? Of course, it's Dodgeball. But like I said, any gym chain, what do they have over there? That's the terrible one that stops you deadlifting. Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness over there. Obviously, we don't have that here. So you'd hear them tirading against anything that had machines in it, especially Smith machines, anything that was tons and tons of cardio machines. Even though a lot of CrossFit boxes now have those exact cardio machines in there, it all turns around anyway. But the idea was that their training was more functional than anything that was happening in these Globo gyms. But yet at the end of their WODs, how many of them would be grabbing dumbbells and doing bicep curls and tricep extensions off the floor? That's why you can never really tie yourself down into one modality or one doctrine or dogma, because something's going to change later down the line. Something's going to change. I remember the first CrossFit articles I was reading. Can't remember the geezer's name. I don't even know if he's still involved with it. But the big thing that caught me, that got me trying little elements of CrossFit out, was he would say people were coming for a gym tour and say, oh, where's your cardio machines? And he'd point at their body. You're the cardio machine. And I like that. Of course it's cool. Yeah, of course you're the cardio machine. You have to move your body in a certain way. But now most of these CrossFit gyms have got airdynes, have got ski ergs, have got rowers. Some have got treadmills. Some have got just watt bikes. I'm like, well, hang on. What happened to that old dogma of you're the cardio machine? Now you've got cardio machines, because you see what a pointless thing that was to say in the beginning. Really.
I also don't like when people say this, because they go, okay, so running outside is more functional. Like people that go, I don't see why people drive to a gym to run and walk on a treadmill. You can just do that outside. Now, in agree, I get these sorts of going outside and doing things like this, right? But when you're looking at function, if you're going to go to, let's say ancestral, because we're all, it's not just Liver King that talks about ancestors. It's everybody that wants to do a strength training analogy. So we talk about functional training. Okay, but a lot of people, without no disrespect, a lot of people coming into gyms now, the structural integrity, the level of obesity we have in the Western world now, most people aren't built like the people ancestral built around running, that literally got up and were born with bare feet, walking around, running after stuff. So that advice for that person who's 40 kilos overweight and has inflammation around the joints to go, no, running is functional. Yeah, good luck. And that functional running will put you in, crutches sooner than you can say anything. And I'm like, how about we start with a walk on a treadmill?
Yeah.
On so Netflix, and it's not bad.
Like, I was up in Oldham last weekend and I was out in the hills and it was fucking beautiful. And in Essex, there aren't really hills, right? I think in terms of, if you were to Google it, there, however many, what could be classed as mountains in Essex, mountains in the UK, the tallest peak in Essex was like number 3,200 on the list of peaks in the UK. It's like, oh, come on, man. Can't even get a hill sprint in. And I was in these hills going, I love a hill sprint. I really want to grab my trainers and go sprint up some of these hills. Now, if I told my clients to start doing hill sprints, half of them ain't going to walk for the first 3 weeks of the program because their Achilles is going to be fucked. Absolutely fucked. The team's not going to like it. Nothing's going to like it. They're going to get calf DOMs like they've never experienced in their goddamn life. they're not going to want to do hill sprints again. So I don't make them do hill sprints. What do? We talk about their overall daily activity, their steps, because that's something easy to do. Now, if they are busy, as one of my clients horrifically is, he got himself, and I love that he did this, he got himself one of those little at-home treadmills so he can walk during meetings, not a proper treadmill, just literally a walking belt. Yeah. So he can walk during meetings, during calls, our check-in call he's walking. I love it. That's how he gets his steps in every single day. Now, someone else might go, well, hang on, he's walking on treadmill. It's not real walking, is it? I heard this exact argument from a PT the other day, saying that treadmill running is pointless because you're not propelling yourself forward because the belt's doing that for you. And if you get out on the road, you have to propel. Okay, so let's take that treadmill up 0.5 degrees and your argument is no longer valid because now you have to propel yourself up, because if you just propel that way, the treadmill's going to spit you out the other side. And it really got me thinking. It was really annoying me because this guy was doubling down on this argument. And I just wanted to jump in and say, put that treadmill at any percent incline in your argument, it's gone because you have to propel yourself forward. And then it really occurred to me, well, on a flat treadmill, is it actually the case? You're not. If you were to stand 2-feeted and just jump up on a treadmill, you're going out the back at some point. You're going out the back. So it doesn't really hold up anymore. Walking is walking, running is running. It's the same motion throughout the body. Doesn't matter if it's a banded knee extension or you're sitting on an Atlantis knee extension. Doesn't matter if it's a banded leg curl or an Atlantis seated or a lion leg curl or some sort of homemade GHD. You're working that muscle in the way it functions.
Laws of physics. If for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, for you to not fly off the back of the treadmill, you have to have an equal force going forward to allow you to not fly off the back of it. So no, that irrefutably wrong.
Yeah. It's so dumb.
But this is coaches. This is coaches that similar things that people go, you've got to have 6-7 meals a day, little and often, because this is what I do as a bodybuilder. It's exactly the same. Yeah. I run outside as someone that's been running athletics all my life. And it's like optimal versus practical. What works for you is not going to work for this other person. This person that maybe you might be a 25-year-old trainer, you're a 35-year-old father of 4, who, multiple business CEO, different life.
Yeah.
Going into like fat loss over 30. Because obviously you went into this and you mentioned earlier on that someone saying that they're 25, they can eat what they want. It's not the same at 35. Do you really think, having then gone and done it, do you think fat loss is actually harder after 30? Or do you think it's now that we eat more for convenience and we move considerably less as we get into careers?
So biologically and hormonally, I would say in 30, no. I would say there's nothing really major that happens. 40, potentially. 50, 60, yeah, now we're talking. But not in your 30s. So people do have this idea that you hit 25, you hit 30, your metabolism changes as if it's some sort of box, and this switch now means you have to press it. No, your metabolism doesn't change. Remember what your metabolism is. It's a combination of all the different, the combination of the food you're taking in, the activity you're doing to expel it throughout the day, regardless of whether it's in the gym or whether it's on the treadmill or whatever the hell it is. Your priorities are likely to have changed. Some of you may have got married. Some of you may have had kids. Some of you may have taken on a much larger role in your company. And therefore, you haven't got the freedom that you had from 21 to 25 to go out every night and be able to do that multiple nights in a row, even though some of you 30-year-olds are still trying it. I see you. I watch you. I know what you're doing. It's a losing battle, Rob. Things change. Rather than chasing multiple goals per week, some guys are in a one-woman relationship and they're settled down on the sofa on a Friday night watching Netflix rather than burning 6,000 calories on the gym floor, on the dance floor, chewing their face off. The priorities change. Your lifestyle has to accommodate it. Therefore, if your focus isn't where it needs to be, your food intake is definitely changing. The amount of clients I've had that I would say, I don't think I've had anyone for a long while that was under 30, and most of which have kids. And that's what changes. Like they're not as active as they are because they've got to look after this tiny little thing that you can't look away from for 2 seconds or it'll fucking die for whatever reason. So you're not going out, you're not getting your 10,000 steps a day away from that kid, especially if you're on your own. The priorities change. So therefore, your activity and your food input changes alongside it, because now you're tired all the time. So you're going to want that glucose. You're going to want those carbs. You're too knackered to go to the gym. You're assuming you haven't got time to go to the gym, even though you've got time to exercise. Two different things entirely. So nothing biologically changes at 30 to make fat loss harder. It's, and I hate using this word because you just get a tirade of abuse, but it's the excuses change.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I it's interesting you mentioned like going out and how many steps you have. I remember once I went out in Hong Kong and I walked back from, for anyone that knows Hong Kong, I walked back from central Hong Kong to Kennedy Town, which is probably about a 30-minute walk at 4 in the morning. And obviously, going side to side, I was probably doing twice as many steps as would normally take when I'm walking in a straight line. And I remember I had my Apple Watch on, and I got out of bed, I took one step, and I got a notification, you've hit your 10,000 steps, you've hit your move goal, or whatever it was. I'm like, how? And I realized I'd achieved it from 12 to 5 a.m. but you see it all the time with clients. When you get results, they go, I've got my 20-year-old body back. And when you get into a routine, when they get healthy, so then like nutrient partitioning becomes better, when you start moving more, when you start getting into routine with the training, when you start like working on the recovery, improving their sleep, you'll be amazed how easy it actually becomes once you kind of get the ball rolling with this stuff. And I think when you were a kid, you said, like me, athletics. I also did rugby. I also went to the gym. I also was moving around and going to clubs. I was generally so active, and the world has become more sedentary. And I think more so now when people are working from home, they don't even have a commute anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's terrible. Oh my God, the amount of guys I hate it because I know some people that I really, really love dearly that use them. The amount of guys, grown men on these electronic scooters now. And you're just turning into that scene from Wall-E where everyone's sat in this chair that's hovering around. Mate, you're all on scooters. If they add a chair element to that scooter, you're going to use it, bruv. Of course you are.
That's such a good point.
Terrifying.
Who would have thought the next 1984 would be Wall-E?
And I've called one of my mates out on it, and he said, well, it helps me commute quicker. Get up earlier then. Get up earlier.
Walk quicker.
Commute quicker. Walk faster. Christ, man. It's weird the things people will say to justify their own inactivity or their inability to stop eating junk.
I also think we're in a world that's more comfortable than ever before, to the point where look at the things that are like popular in the like personal development world, right? We're talking like ultra marathon things become really popular, really hard workouts become popular, ice baths, right? Wim Hof breathing, so which is a fairly uncomfortable meditation style, right? There are things now that people are paying to get uncomfortable because the world becomes so comfortable. I see people all the time when it comes to excuses that clients like to be a certain way and they don't actually think that about the actions they have to do to get there. So one of the questions I always ask in a consult when I start with a client is like, I always start finding out where the past is. Where is it they don't want to get away from? And then I go forward and go, right, if everything worked to plan for the future, and then I find out where they're at now and why they don't look like that. But in the future, I always ask, not just how you want to look, but how you want to feel, behave, perform, what habits do you want to have? And I get things like, I'd love to be the person that gets up in the morning and goes for a run. Or I'd like to be the person that goes on hikes on the weekends or preps my food. And then it's almost the mentality is like, they don't start doing it. I'm like, it's not when you get abs, all of a sudden, you just want to go and do those things. You've got to start now. The people that say that, then get the lift up to my gym, which is on the second floor. Take the stairs.
Oh my God.
And you're right. The excuses change after 30, and our lives have become more comfortable than ever before.
Massively so. And there's more opportunity to be comfortable. And we don't need to, but you could go down a kind of almost conspiracy type rabbit hole as to why that is the case. But the option to be more comfortable and have other people do stuff for you it's more abundant than we've ever known in history.
Do you think dieting is perceived as harder than ever before, because we are so used to, if I want to watch a film, I can get it now. If I want takeout, I can get it now. Everything I pay for, I get it. There's nothing else really other than what we do, maybe making money and mentors and that, but where you pay for it and then it takes time to get.
That's it. It's not instant results. And this mass delusion that we're all busier than we actually are when we're not. You say you're busy. If you literally tell me you haven't got time in the day to prep your food or to go to the gym or even to just exercise, show me the screen time on your phone first. And then let's discuss if that is actually the case. Show me the last things you watched on. I don't know if Netflix logs the stats or not. Show me those things first. And then we'll talk about whether you do actually have time. You're not
How many clients have you spoken to where they say they haven't got time when you ask them about the stuff they haven't done, and then they'll start halfway through the session, they'll start talking to you about Game of Thrones? You see it so often. It really is. We are more unproductive than ever. And I'm not saying, putting on myself on a pedestal, saying I'm the opposite. I am very much included in this, of being unproductive when I should be doing stuff and getting comfortable. But I think we take less ownership now than we ever did. And I think this is where the personal development role becomes really important, because people don't take ownership. They don't look at their priorities. They don't actually take a moment to reflect on themselves, because taking part medals, it doesn't, like, people don't think like that anymore.
Yeah. I think it also coincides with that turning 30. You've then had 10 years of programming. You've had longer, really. You've had your school, your peers, your close family, even the condition your teachers are in. You've everything programming you. And then you hit your 20s, once you've left uni, or whether you never went to uni, and you're kind of more self-sufficient in where you get your input from. But again, that's all down to your peers, your family, who you hold in high regard. Luckily for me, I used to spend most of my time. Okay, I was at college, and I can't really think, maybe two people were overweight, really. But no one was really involved with sports, a couple involved with martial arts. My guys that I held in high regard were all in athletics. Those were my heroes, were the athletes in the sprinters in the 80s and 90s. And then the guys who were faster than me and my coaches and the guys I trained with at my athletic club, those were the people I looked up to more than anything. Those were the people I wanted to be like. So even though, this is big popular stuff now in the personal development world, even back then I was going, well, I want to be like them. What do they do? Well, Graham, he does all this stretching at the end of the sessions. I'm going to do my stretching as well. He goes hill sprints on a Sunday as well. I'm going to go do hill sprints. He's taking this creatine stuff. I'm going to take this creatine stuff as well. Creatine in the early 90s was not good. Creatine like it is now. I'm certain it had extra anabolic properties. I'm certain it did. And
super droll.
And much like you, we used to watch wrestlers. We watched wrestlers. We loved Arnie. These were our heroes. Who are kids' heroes now?
That is such a valid point. I wanted to look like Triple H in 2000. That's what got me into the gym. But now you don't. Maybe Marvel.
But even then, those guys are smaller than ever. And again,
losing male role models year by year. You had this conversation on the Bond debate, right? It's getting worse.
100%. If you made it a female Bond, you're taking away a huge masculine male role model. In terms of wrestlers, I'll be honest, I haven't looked at wrestling for a long time, because similar to most things, I find it tough to keep on top of who's who anymore. I watched Ric Flair's last match the other week.
You should. With Vince McMahon gone, Triple H is doing a much better job, by the way. It's
Triple H is taking it over,
yeah?
Okay. I love Triple H.
He's part of the creative team, and Stephanie now runs the business.
Stephanie's still there, yeah?
Stephanie's the CEO now, with a guy called Nick Khan, and Triple H now running the creative process. So all the creative, all the shows, all that, loads of people have come back. It's so much better.
All you had to say was Stephanie, and I was sold. But yeah, 100%. I watched Ric Flair's last match. I shed a little tear. And I saw Undertaker and Bret Hart in the audience, and I shed more of a little tear, because I was like, these are my childhood heroes. And even Ultimate Warrior, when he started doing stuff with Zach Evans again, I was watching his videos relentlessly on YouTube. And I was like 32 then. I was not a kid anymore. Okay, some might argue that. Some might debate and say I still was a kid. So I was still looking up to these same role models well into my 30s. And obviously these guys start dying out. But so many people are who are their role models? Actors that aren't necessarily in shape. I don't know. I think the athletic physique has changed over the years. And even then, these kids aren't necessarily looking at these athletes and thinking, God, rather than looking at them and thinking about, right, how can I implement what they're doing to improve my own life? They're arguing, is the playing field the right color? Or not the field, is the field of athletes the right color? Are we doing enough to allow this gender in and this gender in? And then it becomes an argument people don't really want to have, because who actually cares about that stuff?
No one you don't really even know where the middle ground is here, right? Because there's an interesting thing I saw recently when it comes to beauty standards. And I'm on the side of arguing, like you, that I think there should be more role models of men being in shape and being healthy and people wanting to be that way. But there was a great, someone put together a collage of male models and female models in this world of like acceptance of bigger people. For blokes, there isn't. The standards are super high.
Yeah.
And like, there's no middle ground. And I think the problem is where people don't know where the standards are. If the standards are happy at any size, fine. Maybe we can find values and priorities and other things. We can disagree with that, but at least there's clarity. But there's also not. We're in a world now where people, I think, are more confused and lost than ever. And like for me, from my late 20s until now, and I think this is relatively normal, but we'll delve into this. It's a weird time. I'm 32 now, and you feel in this middle ground where I don't feel like an adult, but I'm also no longer a kid. And I'm now in a position where my values, what I valued 10 years ago, doing 15, 20 hours on the gym floor, loving life, loving every moment of it. It's like, I'm almost at that crossroads now where I've got to make a move to where the next decade is going to be. And you sort of alluded to this being the same for you when you were my age. So what was your journey like? You started going into how you found people like Paul Mort and all these people, but you've been on the journey for the last 5 so years. So what's that been like? What's the steps that have got you to where you are now?
So the big thing was, the biggest thing, and thank God I was already involved in the industry and I was already doing it, is that if you want to change your energy to improve your life, you have to watch what you're eating. If you have shit input, you get shit output. If you're eating junk all the time, how can you possibly expect to have the energy to set up a proper business, or to chase clients, or to even have, last longer than 2 minutes in bed, or to look good enough to go out and try and meet someone? Obviously, that's all changed now with the apps. But I think that's turning around again, honestly. So for me, the big step was first, right, where's my energy at? And it was terrible, because I was eating junk, I was overtraining, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't really socializing. I was quite an angry guy around that era as well. So that had to change first, is right, let's sort my energy out. And thank God it just so coincided with that I was dropping weight because I wanted to give a damn about how I looked, because I wanted to be more attractive, because I wanted to get a more attractive partner. And luckily, the two went hand in hand. Suddenly I was in the mindset to technically run 3 different businesses. I was running a boot camp franchise. I was PTing people away from the boot camp franchise. And I set up my own weightlifting club that I taught to multiple CrossFit boxes across the south of England, including London. At that point, I thought, man, I've really got my shit together. This is really, really cool. And I was definitely taking some of that 20s energy into my 30s with me. But as your priorities change again, I got comfortable in a relationship. The businesses I was working with weren't aligned with my values, and we parted ways in all 3 areas, really. So
how did you make that decision? Because I suppose that you obviously built those businesses up for a fair amount of time, and it's probably all you knew was these businesses. So it's a hard pill to swallow when all you've known, and all the way you pay your bills, the way you provide for people, is wrapped up around this sort of thing. And now you know that it didn't align with your values. That's a huge risk and a gamble and a commitment to move away from those things. So how did that come about? What happened?
So I think some people could look at my CV and go, man, you've jumped from job to job to job to job. For me, it's about my values and my standards, what I'm willing to accept for myself from other people. And to be fair, I'm very, very particular about those standards, which is not to be found in the mainstream industries. I joke all the time that I'm in a people-centric industry and I'm not a people person. I'm in a PT-centric, I'm in the PT industry and I hate most PTs. It's weird. I get it. But I'm not in the PT industry for the PTs. I'm not. I tried that. I tried teaching the qualification for 2 years. That did not fit with my values at all. And in terms of the standards, I was willing to accept myself. So that's how it came.
Where we differ. That's what we differ.
Yeah. That's how I came about to change in my 30s, is what am I willing to accept for myself in terms of how I want my life to look. That's why I changed my relationship. That's why I changed who I was working with. Later down the line, some of the companies I didn't fit with their values, and instead a couple I stopped working with and a couple stopped working with me. You can call it that. So in terms of how, I work with clients trying to lose weight, trying to sort their mental health out, trying to get a better quality of life overall by starting with the physical transformation. And I don't mean that word in a 12-week transformation style. I mean transforming from this life of pain and mediocrity you're living in to something you're actually excited about. Because I want to help people, and because when I've done it myself, I understand how it feels and I know how powerful it can be for other people. You could look at this as me trying to inflict my positive impact on the larger community, if not the world, okay, depending on what reach I can actually get online. That's why I want to do it. Where I can't stand is the politics that come from people not communicating. And that's in a relationship, that's in the workplace, that's amongst your peer group. And as soon as communication breaks down, I think trust and respect break down with it. And that's where you've got no hope of moving forward. Any of those realms. If there's no respect in your work, what the fuck are you doing there? If there's no respect in your relationship, why the hell are you with her? If there's no respect for yourself, then you're obviously looking like shit and feeling like shit and feeding yourself shit. Respect has to come first. Most people don't understand how to find respect for themselves, let alone someone else. But again, it all comes down to what area you're spending the most amount of time and those type of people that you're spending that time with. So some of the companies I didn't end up working with for a longer period of time was because my values went one way and their values were pointed another way. And that's fine. I can't expect them to change for me, and I'd hope they wouldn't expect me to change for them. Some did. Cool. We parted ways. Some in more, what's the word? No, I'm trying to be smart there. It's not happening. Some was, easy and chilled and fine. And some it was, all sorts of accusations being thrown at each other. It was horrific. But what was most important for me was looking at myself as the most important person I have to look after first. Not putting myself as center of the universe, but I'm the most important person I can. Let's go back to the plane analogy that gets overused all the time. You're told to put your air mask on first because you're of no use to anyone else if you haven't got your own oxygen coming in. And I like that, even though it's overused to hell. I like it because you have to look after yourself first. Otherwise, you can only do so for so long before you hit some sort of wall. And then either your finances are low, your resources are low, your network is low, you've isolated yourself, your body fat is horrendous, your hormones are fucked. Whatever the hell it is, there's going to come a point where you're going to hit this wall. And because you put everyone else in every other realm of your life first before you, then you've just chipped away at your armor over and over and over again. And now you've hit this wall and you're at your weakest fucking point.
And it's really hard to get out of that as well. I've seen it with clients who've done that for so many years. They don't know how to look after themselves anymore. And they don't have the ability because there's expectations on them now of their family, of their work. They've almost worked overtime so long that if they take a 5% drop back, it's noticed.
Yeah, exactly. And you get to that point where you are weak as hell, and you lose part of your identity as well by putting everyone else first. That was the biggest thing I would have described my darkest era a couple of years ago, is I had these certain areas of my life that I thought were pretty good. When you look at them now, maybe not as good as they could have been, but they were the three main parts of my identity. And when they were all gone within quick succession, I didn't know who I was, let alone what I could do. You start questioning everything. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why am I acting this way? Why do I believe this? Because all the stuff that I did it for was gone. So it didn't really matter anymore. That allowed some breathing room to really question my motives and my values. But I would say that's what I did around about my 30s anyway. I was in a very unhappy relationship. I was out of shape. I wasn't really progressing in my business. I wasn't really progressing in my physique or my sport. So then I wasn't really, I didn't have a large social circle. So I had to question what am I doing? And I don't know if you ever really figure out who you are. I don't know if that's a lifelong journey or what, because again, I think your priorities change. And a lot of these priorities change based around the decades, because we always talk about the decades as if they are life-changing periods of your life. Like, really, what is the difference between 29 and 31? It's not much of a difference. But between 29 and 39, okay, maybe I can list a few differences. Between 29 and 53, yeah, it should be loads of fucking differences. But we do kind of assign these societal benchmarks to something. Well, by 30, you should have done this, and that. Why? What if that doesn't fit with what I actually want? You know?
I think the interesting to say about like sort of chipping away at your values. I think we often look at things of, you say like the business was doing well, and then these things fall apart. And I think in a way, things could be going well, but if you're in a position where you're not looking after yourself first, and it's not aligned with your values. One thing I've always learned is, someone said to me, I can't remember who said this, but someone said once to me that if you can make money, you can be successful in a career where you're not that into it anymore. How much could you succeed in a career where you are really into it? And I think when you start to get those moments, if you don't even start to make the move towards that area, even if you're doing really well in this thing right now, the more time you spend in it, the more burnt out you'll be. And eventually, before you even know it, when you're getting complacent, you'll see things happen. In the PT industry, you see people who've lost their love for the gym floor, the clients start dropping off. Then, because people know when you're not in it. And that thing will just start to chip away until that thing that was good, that was your comfort blanket, isn't comfortable anymore. And it's because subconsciously you couldn't do it anymore, and you just started phoning it in, not intentionally, just because your mind wasn't and your heart wasn't in it.
I know a decent amount of guys at the moment whose business life has changed recently, whether it's a gym they're working with is shut down, or they're trying to open their own gym, or they're just moving around, or they've had a mass client exodus, whatever the hell it is. And they're going through these high periods of stress. And a similar thing a lot of them have said is, I've just kind of lost my love for training at the moment. Like, so they're not training. They're not going on the gym floor. They'll maybe go on the gym floor about once every 3 weeks, and you see them do a run or something like that. Or they'll try a workout, but it's just not great. Now, granted, again, it's because they're going through a period of high stress, so they need to watch what they're doing anyway. It doesn't mean you completely step away from the gym floor. The common denominator between them all is they're saying, I've lost my love for the gym, for training. So that means the thing that got them into the industry, more than likely, because I think most PTs join the industry because they love training more than they love helping other people first. Suddenly that's gone. The thing they would have done 3, 4, 5 times a week, if not more in some respect, especially if they're training alongside clients, that they've lost their love for it. Like, that's a weird thing to say. And it's only really something that could happen in your career or your relationship, because your priorities and your values change. I'd like to think that no one, even though of course it's happened, no one's ever said that about their kids. I've lost my love for my kids. I'm not going to bring them up anymore. But you can say that in a relationship and in a career and with
Do you think that's because it's become their job? So you start because because I've heard this loads of times, the quickest way to lose your love for something is turn your hobby into your career. And now I'm not saying that's true with everything. I'd like to think of this because my career, I'll still love it like I do right now. But is that because because I feel this way sometimes about the gym floor. I've caught myself saying that. And I sometimes think, is that because I've done this for 10 years and it's been a career? And I almost can't separate my training from my job, because you're in a gym that you work in your work environment, you're speaking to people that you work with.
Yeah.
So it becomes wrapped up in it. And if your career's not going well, do you want to stay in work longer?
Yeah, it's true. I think, I mean, it's two things there I'd hit on. One, this is why I near enough exclusively try and train in the gym that I don't work at, because the environment, and this is why I struggled to train at home in lockdown when I was in a tiny little flat on my own, is suddenly that place became my home and my office and my gym. It's not meant to be like that. Certainly not, unless if you've got a big place and you've got a home garage and things like that, cool, you can make that work quite easily. But for me to then be training in between clients in this place, okay, sometimes I do it because I ain't got time. But to have a separate environment where I go there, where my only focus is on training, and I like the gym and it's fun, and I haven't got to worry about a client turning up 10 minutes early that wants to train or anything like that. I can just shut down and use that environment for what it's for. I think that's helped me keep my love for training over the last few years more than anything. And I've found the days where I am kind of stuck with clients and I have to jump in the gym for 20, 30 minutes in between, I don't necessarily feel like I enjoy them half as much as when I go to this gym around the corner. Even though technically it's a better gym, kit's much better, it's a cool environment. The one I go to around the corner is amazing. It is my favorite gym, but it's just a spit and sawdust warehouse gym, Cybex equipment, some Atlantis, some Prime. He's built another leg room. I can't wait for this. He's knocked the next building down. He's building a leg room. I can't wait, man. But the other thing is there, like we said about the surefire way to get miserable is to turn your hobby into a career. And how many people out there are yelling from the pulpit, find what you're passionate about, like, and then do what you love and you'll make money. Really? It's as simple as that, is it? Because that's one way to start losing the love for what you're passionate about, because it's now a career.
I don't think it's wrong advice. I don't think it's wrong advice. I think it's people go into expectations. It's the same way that people go into therapy and looking at improving their mental health with the goal of being happy all the time. It's not physically possible. It is these things comes in waves, and good, strong mental health is being able to be calm in the fluctuations of moods.
Sure.
Now, if you're going into turning your passion to career, I think turning your passion to career is a good thing. But if that phrase turns into turn your passion to career and you'll never work a day in your life, that's when it becomes bullshit. Because at that point, there's things in every job that you don't like doing. Now, I want to turn this into my job, right? But there are parts of this that I won't like doing, right? There's a point when I really get high into the editing stuff. I like it at the moment. Will I like it in 5 years? Will I want to outsource that stuff? Will I want to do all the outreach? Will I want to do all the write-ups? Will I want to go through and make timestamps? Maybe not. But it's worth it because I enjoy this bit. That's what sometimes people, I think, lack when they try and turn the passion job. They think, well, why am I not immediately happy?
I think that's a bigger thing that happens when you move from your 20s into your 30s as well, because you're so carefree in your 20s. You'll stay out till 3 a.m. drinking. You'll do 3 nights on a row. You'll go see every band you could possibly go see. You do all this crazy stuff. But they're like all these things that you're madly, wildly passionate about. I was so passionate about my athletics, my watching wrestling back then, going to see bands, Olympic lifting as well, way, way, way before it was even a quarter as popular as it is now. And I'm not trying to say that like these BJJ guys are all saying now, I was doing it before it was trendy. I still don't think Olympic lifting's trendy. It's really fucking not. It's the least trendy sport out there. So to then have all these things that you're passionate about in your 20s, and again, you move into your 30s and your career might have slightly changed. Your boss might expect something slightly different from you. You might have to go a different way to get that more secure pension or that higher pay rise or whatever it is. Maybe your missus has started talking about kids, or maybe you've started talking about kids, or other people are saying, why haven't you got kids yet? Maybe you've had to move into a place just to get some freedom and independence, and it's not quite what you can afford. Suddenly all the things you're passionate about just drop because you've spent X amount of time away from them, or you just don't enjoy them as much, or you realize there are other areas of life that you need to focus on a bit more. Like, what's more important? Well, people would argue this nowadays as well. What's more important? Like going to watch your team every single week or raising a decent family. Unfortunately, in this era, there are people that would argue against that.
Do you think that's why 30s becomes for so many this crisis in confidence, let's say, because this is the age where you do start to have that pressure of raising a family? Because in your 20s, some people do, some people don't, right? That's a choice. It can be carefree in a way. Some people like it, some people don't. When you get to 30, it's like that window. I know less so for the guys in this room, but that window for if you have a same age partner becomes shorter, and then the guys now starting to think, am I earning enough? Am I ready? Have I got my shit together? Am I brave enough to be a part? Like, these are things that go through my head with a long-term partner next year, and that puts pressure on me. It's like, I should have more things together. I should be in a better career. Can I take this risk anymore? There is more things to lose. Your values change at a time where you have more to lose. And is that why people find this such a hard age?
And it's all to do, I don't know when this came. It's also to do with, again, people put this pressure on the age of 30 as if, right, now you're running out of time. And it's not true unless you are female, in which case, yes, now a certain time or your part of your body clock is running out. 100%. I agree with that. But for everything else, I don't know where it's come from. Why should someone have a house, car, whatever the hell? Why 30 as if it is like the halfway point of your life or something like that? It doesn't really add up. And again, what I was saying earlier about when I brought some of the energy from my 20s into my 30s, I don't mean physical energy. I mean, in 20s, you feel like almost anything's possible. And then you get to your 30s and you've still got that bit like, I want to do this, I want to do this. But society and your relationship and your job is saying, no, you can't do that. You've got to get serious now. You've got to get your shit together. You can't go away for a month. You need to ask permission. Your wife needs to ask permission from her boss. You can't go away for that long. What are you talking about? No, you can't do these crazy things. You need insurance for that. Because what happens if you get injured and suddenly you get caught in these claws of, we can't be reckless anymore. You've got to have your shit together. You've got to listen to your boss and your politician and your wife. And I'm just talking about this from a male perspective because that's the only experience I've had. It's the only experience I've had so far.
Do you think financial security then affects? Do you think this trouble that people feel in the 30s, is it something that everyone sort of goes through to a degree? Or do you think financial security impacts how 30 lands? So, like, one of the biggest things that I have struggled with since coming to 30 is that changing priorities on what to, wanting to deviate a little bit in what I want to do with my life, but not having the financial means to properly go all in because I need to pay my bills, I need to pay rent. I've got more to lose than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Where if there was a loaded version of Simon, I might not have these worries. I'm now in a better position to go all in with something. If you compare me, who wants to start a podcast, to Stephen Bartlett, who was a little bit younger than me, but going into this similar age, or Chris Williamson, they had a business that made them money in their 20s. And now it's very easy for them to go, cool, I'm going to make my passion a job. Whereas I don't have the time. I have to do all the editing. I have to do all this myself. And I'm doing that around a full-time job. And is that where this crisis of confidence comes? Is like, well, how do I do this? I've got this where my brain wants to go anymore, but I need this to survive. And does that change how I land 30 as opposed to somebody else? Or do you still think people who are financially loaded still get this a little bit?
I think people that are financially loaded still get this. Where we've seen countless people have all the money in the world and then end up with nothing. They either took a big gamble, or they didn't value it, or they just overspent it, or if they just weren't meant to have that amount of money in their bank account, whatever emotional issue was going on. And we've seen that with famous people, and we probably know a few people that had loads and loads of money that don't have it anymore. So the financial security, it's cool to feel financially secure, especially in this era. But financial security does not equal happiness. Because again, there's always the strive for more, whether that is more trips, whether that is more technology or more material possessions, or whatever it is, or just more experiences. there's always that strive for more. So realistically, what is financial security? Is it just the basic of your bills are paid and you haven't got to worry about going into debt or someone knocking on your door, bailiffs? Or is financial security covering all those bills, but being able to have all these experiences that add more happiness to your life? It's like, what is the definition of financial security? Because I know people in way, way worse debt than I am, that I would class as much, much happier than I am. And again, it comes down to lifestyle, comes down to where you're living, who you're living with. I know some people that are on much, much lower income than I am that are still happy as fuck because of the experiences that they're having in their life. So I know our default emotion, our default experience in life cannot be happiness, and it's not meant to be happy, really. You take away all the material possessions in the world, if you take us all back as we currently are now, let's say 500 years ago, we're not going to be looking for happiness. We're going to be looking for survival. And then happiness comes as an extension of that, of being able to survive. I don't think happiness back then is the same as we define happiness now. We define happiness as having it all, having the hot wife, living on the beach, not, 6 figures in the bank account every month, respect from your peers locally, or if not commercially and globally known. We look at that as happiness when it's not really. This is not really, and this is why some people end up in those positions and then discover they're not happy at all. Let's look at Will Smith. Let's look at Robin Williams. Let's look at half of the grunge artists who were at the peak of their career that killed themselves.
Jim Carrey famously said, if there's one thing I could impart on the world, I wish everyone could get famous. So they realise it's everything.
I love it. And that's it. You would automatically say, okay, he must be one of the happiest guys in the world. It's funny as hell. Have all the sort of roles that he wants, definitely financially secure. Okay, he's absolutely crazy and he's fucking unhinged, but it puts it perfectly. Puts it absolutely perfectly that we tie our happiness to our success, mainly related to our financial success. And everything else can suffer at that point. This is how people end up in unhappy marriages and things like that. Man, I heard something. We'll talk about this a little bit later. I heard something mad from an old Rogan clip to do with how people's relationships started and why the divorce rate might be so high. And it's not necessarily to do with our distractions of each other. It goes to something much deeper, but we'll get to that another point. It was fascinating, but I don't know if it's true. That's where we're tying our happiness level to. So when you reach your 30s and you think, okay, maybe I don't feel quite happy. There's so many reasons as to why that could be. It's not necessarily because you're not following society's rules of having kids by that point and having your own house and your own car and being well under your way in your career. Obviously, we've also changed what the definition of career is now as well. Like 20 years ago, if you told someone they were going to be making money playing computer games, you'd have said they were dumb. You just said, no, there's no way in hell that's going to work.
Especially in the fitness industry, where the only way you make money is to do 40, 50 hours on the gym floor. And now no one wants to do the gym floor anymore. Now, I'm in that boat, right? I want more location freedom after spending all of my 20s in a basement and not doing traveling and focused on my career and did nothing. Yeah. But I also know people that absolutely love gym floor training and almost now demonized for, well, why is that what you want? Because I'm good at it. Yeah. I like it. And there's nothing wrong with that.
You're seen as a dinosaur in the industry. So for me, what's way, way more important than my financial security is my freedom. I would much rather have my freedom than be doing 80 hours on the fucking gym floor a week, which is obviously impossible. But you then look at, okay, I could go online. I could go all in online. Technically, that was happening by default in lockdown. And what I missed more than anything was the gym floor and that one-to-one interaction. So now I've got to toe the line. I have the opportunity to reach a bigger audience and therefore increase my income globally online or just nationally online, way, way more than we've ever had before, unless you were so well connected that you could release a book or something like that, or you became the celebrity trainer, which everyone still wants to be, which is not all it's cracked up to be.
They didn't pay you for this one.
Well, exactly, yeah.
I was lucky. I was lucky that the other than like the odd session here or there, the only celebrity that I trained was Richie, and he did pay. But it's not always the case.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm certain there's more deals going on behind the scenes. You train me and I'll help you get a bigger audience because my audience is huge. So therefore, I'll talk about you training me and you get more followers and things like that, which is no guarantee. Doesn't mean anything. And essentially, that person's getting free training. You see this with these influencers approaching businesses. Give me a free hotel stay and I'll talk about your hotel in front of my 25,000 followers. Fuck off.
I don't think it's a bad thing, but if your goal is to be the celebrity trainer, that doesn't work because you can't have that with everybody. Having one influencer on your books to help out is fine, but you've got to have bread and butter somewhere.
Yes. I had so many kids, and not just kids, older people as well, that would come on day one of the PT course, say, right, guys, what are you here for? What's your motives? What's your incentives? What do you want to achieve in this industry? And the amount of people that would say, I want to train celebrities. I want to train athletes. Cool. What type of athletes you want to train? You know, like famous boxers and famous...
Good luck.
Your incentives are so skewed based on what other people have said their incentives for the industry are.
Do you think?
I think that one-to-one is, I don't want to say a dying art. It's certainly a lost art because you can tell what PTs actually enjoy being on that gym floor and which ones don't.
Yeah.
Because it's taken their time. Okay, they're getting paid for it, but it's taken their time. So therefore, their freedom's disappearing. Yeah. And they would much rather, I don't know, get this weird passive income that must come from having 100,000 Instagram followers, which doesn't happen.
No. I also think that's as well as where priorities changed, right? Because when I was 24, 25, I didn't mind. Freedom wasn't as much on the top of my priority list. I wanted to build a rest of my business. I wanted to learn. I wanted to be in the right environments. I didn't mind grinding on the gym floor. I loved it. But now in my 30s, and I spent 10 years of not doing that, well, some other people did the opposite. They went out and did all the boys things and traveling, and they got to 30 it's business time. I was the opposite. So now, freedom is now shifted up in my priority list in comparison to where it was 5 years ago. And it's now understanding that, and now how does now my business evolve with that? In the same way, the people I want to work with, I'm about to do an opening in the next few weeks of Made Coaching is changing to be working with coaches and offering a mentoring service more than an actual online coaching service. And that's because I now can relate and have more passion to talk to those people anymore because that is what I've known for the last 5-10 years, more so than what it's like to struggle to get in shape. I did that for the first time when I was 21. I'm over a decade since I've learned that struggle. Jeez. So I don't have that same, not level of empathy, but understanding that I would have had 5 years ago. So, those things change. And do you think, we both know, we spoke about this on podcasts before, that men's mental health is worse than ever. And do you think that this thing of people hitting 30, and you've alluded to it a couple of times in this episode of men hitting 30, why 30? It's a societal thing that we've Do you think this is something that everyone has always felt? Is it like a biological clock? We've all spoke about families and evolutionary. This is the time we would start thinking of being providers and things like this. Do you think that is something we've always faced the entirety of time? Or do you think this is a modern phenomenon due to comparison and social media feeling like we should be a certain way?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think it is. It's a societal thing. Where it's exactly come from, I don't know. I can't believe for a second that maybe even just 100 to 200 years ago, in fact, 100, I don't think there was as much emphasis placed on the age 30 as there is now. You've even got Forbes releasing 30 under 30. Do they do a 40 under 40 and a 50 under 50 as well? I don't think they do.
And how much does that make this a problem? Because when you become 31, now society's treating you like a failure. Do I tell you what what really fucking knocked me recently? So I signed up. I wanted to. This is silly, but it really it did hit me back a little bit because it's the first time I've ever really experienced this. So I signed up a little while ago to PlayStation Plus to try GTA Online. I heard it for years. I thought I'd give it a go. Yeah. But part of this, for my cheap year subscription, every quarter you get a new game. So I got the Tony Hawk's game 1 month, and I got for the last FIFA 22, not the current one. So I thought, okay, I've got a bit of time. I'm going to play FIFA, and I'm going to do a pro. So I'm going to become a pro. And it says date of birth. I can't be my age anymore. 1997 was the youngest age of birth you could be for your player on the game. I cannot be in a video game my age. I've never felt so old. Never in my existence have I in a video game been too old to be a character.
Oh, damn it! It makes no sense.
But
it makes no sense.
It's because the season, right? You do a proper retirement thing, like things like this. But I'm like, what? Like, the only closest thing I remember this is when I started realizing that I'm older now than players that are retiring in professional rugby. I was like,
wow.
18-year-olds playing for England, and I'm like, I was getting pissed in Aberystwyth at this time. I was like so many vodkas deep. I'm like, but it's that thing as well, right? I am comparing myself to like George North. I am comparing myself to, if we're looking at podcasts, I'm comparing myself to like Mr. Beast, or Logan Paul. And I'm like, come on, this is my circumstances. What has got me to this stage is different. Even I compare myself to people like Stephen Bartlett, different upbringing, different everything. I can't compare to this. But you're bombarded with it now. Like every day now, because I want to make my podcast work, every now and then I go onto YouTube, I see podcasts which I like, but always remind me like, man, I'd love that studio.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's more of that. But do you think this makes 30s now? And this could be going into a little bit of the agenda why things are pushing. This could be going down a bit of a conspiracy route. But do you think this makes it a dangerous time and it makes people in 30s more vulnerable because they can be sold a dream? Entering for anything, business and everything else, pay me £1,000 and I'll find you your answer. I see a system that Garrett J. White was the first one I remember who sold these men in their early 30s that want to get the shit together. Paul Moore's bought a business off it. And I like Paul. I'm not criticizing his business as being like, he does really good work and you can vouch for it. Yeah. But there is now a business and a market to selling to vulnerable 30-year-olds who feel exactly.
And that's going to be the problem. Okay, Garrett J. White, and I've done one of his programs, and I thought it was phenomenal. Okay, Geezer's unhinged. He's an absolute nut job. Same with Elliot Hulse.
He's too religious for me.
It got really fucking religious.
I really liked his message, and he started talking about God. And I don't think I'm going to connect with it as well.
That's it. Only X amount of people would. And to be fair, I completed it all. There was just some tasks that you had to do at the very end of it that physically I couldn't fucking do in this town. So I automatically failed the fucking challenge. But again, like you want to talk God, then obviously he talks it in a very Christian perspective, which is not going to be for everyone. Certainly not every 30 to 40-year-old male entrepreneur that he's attracting his stuff to. And that's why I definitely ended up, I preferred Paul Moore anyway. But Paul Moore doesn't talk religion. Elliot Hulse, I loved. Elliot Hulse's was one of the first business programs that I bought, was his garage gym program. And now the geezer's famous over TikTok and Instagram for similar videos to Andrew Tate and stuff like that. Yeah. And now even he goes down a kind of religious route as well. So I think there's more to be said for these older guys, of course, who have been in the trenches a hell of a lot longer and have real results and real perspective because of what they've been through. But mate, you go on Instagram Reels and TikTok now, we're now seeing guys in their early 20s acting like they're masculinity coaches. Guys, you should be also,
how many DMs do you get about this? In almost every comment, like, hey man, I've DM'd you. And it's someone trying to sell me the dream. Trying to sell me a money making scheme.
Yeah, and it's either affiliate schemes, it's business coaching, or it's masculinity coaching, which means you're going to be chucked into probably a Telegram group, and the guy's going to tell you to stop jerking off because you're pathetic, and hit the gym, goddamn hit the gym, and eat steak and eggs and liver and nothing else. It's because what these guys have been sold from guys above them, and it's just going to be another self-perpetuating cycle. So we do have to watch it. We are more vulnerable now because there is more scarcity. Well, there's more perceived scarcity. There is more fear-mongering. The media and the government have a much, much greater control in the West on what people think than they've ever had before. And anyone wants to argue that, then tell me why Joe Rogan nearly got banned, why Alex Jones, why Donald Trump, why Andrew Tate have all been cancelled from every single platform. Okay, maybe not Jordan Peterson, but he wasn't Twitter. there is more control over what people think, or there's more of a grasp for control over what people think.
There is also shitter products. And I tell you why this is damaging, and this is why this makes the problem worse. Is this, and I'm all for the work smart culture as well as the work hard culture, but the problem is that people sell more non-personalized group coaching models to these people who are looking for an answer, that are vulnerable, that are trying to find their way and feel a bit lost. And, I've been sold to on these things sometimes, and you go into this program and it's so impersonal, but you haven't got the confidence to properly realize that. So you come out feeling worse than you did before because you now also failed at this, as opposed to getting a personalized service of someone that's come and spoke to you and go, hey, Lam, what's up? What can we do?
Yeah. And in the culture of the upsell, if you come out of that and you're not feeling great, well, you can be upsold into the next level of coaching, things like that. It's almost going to become like Scientology up in this. Like, okay, you've reached this level, but another 200 grand, you get to the next level. That's where the really good stuff is. It's terrifying, really, because there is so much. Again, I can't remember if it was you I was talking to about this or someone else. We said we've gone from like an information economy to an attention economy. And again, if we get the attention, then you can sell the information on top of that. Again, if it's not quite what someone needs because it's not individualized enough, or that person really hasn't been through what you're going through, then the information is never going to match up. So there's always going to be something missing, and all it's going to take is a slightly different piece of content or video that's going to grab your attention, and you'll just be constantly chasing these, what is self-help porn, really, essentially. And soon there'll be biz coach porn and all sorts of stuff going on.
So to close off, because as I said to you off air, I need to go and hand myself into a police station. If anyone wants to know the story,
I've got a course on how to how to get.
On that note, I might have plenty of time hands if we get arrested. But anyone wants to know the story why I'm doing that, by the way, DM me. I am not sharing this on the podcast. But just to kind of go to close off, because I think it's been a great conversation. We could talk about this for absolute hours. I'm sure we will again. But moving on to a little bit of the solution, like looking back now, being a couple of months away from 40, and then we can talk about, maybe in November we'll do an episode about how terrible you feel and the crisis you're going through right now, like live stream your midlife crisis. But coming to the end of your 30s, if you had to give somebody coming in the early part of the 30s, maybe me even, if you had to give that person, let's say 3 things or 3 bits of advice to help them navigate this time where maybe they're feeling a little bit lost, to feel like their values have changed, their priorities have changed, and they don't know what to do, how does that person start getting clarity?
Well, first off, that live stream when I'm 40 will just be me screaming for an hour. First 2 things are easy.
You'd be like a folk singer. You'd be like, back in my day, that would be, I remember when.
Or I'll suddenly become really, really old and not know how to work in Instagram Live up against the screen. I don't know how to use it.
I'll be asking for a thumbnail. You've forgotten how to use Canva.
Mate, what happens when Canva dies out? What do I have to learn next? I'm not looking forward to it. So 2 things are easy. One, because these are 2 things I tell myself all the flipping time. Is 1, don't stop. You can change direction, whatever the hell it is. But if you've got a vision, just don't stop. There will be moments where motivation's low. There will be moments where progress is low. There might be moments where you have to completely change direction. But as long as you're trying your best to move towards what it is you want, if you know what you want, which leads me into the second point, just don't stop. Doesn't matter what the goal is, whether it's a short-term fat loss thing or a business building thing or whatever the hell it is. Like, you want this podcast to blow up. So don't stop. As soon as you stop, that podcast ain't going to go anywhere. I want to be in the best shape I've ever been by the time I get to 40. I've got 2 and a bit months. I can't stop. Whatever it is, choose a goal and just don't stop. Keep moving in whatever way, shape or form it is. Number 2 is to quote the late, great Ice Cube, who is not dead, but he is great. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. You've got to look at your motivations, especially as you get older, where, time can be perceived that it's running out, or you might have had to have hit a certain level of society or your boss or something is expecting. that you may not have. You've got to ask yourself questions on a daily basis. And this is what I do with my journal from Paul Moore. It's not just journaling your thoughts, it's answering questions every single morning, every single evening. It's to make sure you know where your focus is, where your awareness is, and that what you're doing is helping you move forward towards what you say you want. And every quarter, you question what you want or what you say you want. Because again, like Chris Williamson talks about this a lot. How do we know what we actually want? Is it a base urge or is it being programmed into us? You could say both, really.
Can you ever really know?
Can you ever really know what you want? It opens a huge can of worms. That could be an entire podcast series on its own, trying to find out why you want what you say you want.
Let's delve into that next week. I think that's
terrifying. That could be a good one. I'll do my research because I don't know what I want. But
I think we use that episode to find out. We question each other.
Yeah, you've got to question your motivations and what you think you want to make sure that what you are doing aligns with your values, so you know you're moving towards something meaningful and with purpose. And then you don't stop. In terms of the third one, fuck me. For guys in their 30s,
stop fapping.
Stop fapping. We'll make it a 3-pronged sex one. Stop fapping. Porn has zero value added to your life. And this is the era where girls are going to get a little bit crazy. So in terms of the relationship, you've really got to make sure that you're entering a relationship that fits your values and you both manage each other's expectations. You don't get into a relationship because you're lonely. So if lonely people get into a relationship, it's not a relationship. It's two lonely people trying to make it work. At some point, you're going to hit that wall again where you're weak and you're vulnerable and you haven't got the skills because it was never a good relationship to start with. Like, don't rush. Don't think, fuck, I'm 30. I need to get with someone. Think, cool, I'm 30. Let's check who I am and what I want. And let's find someone that matches my values.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if I was going to add a third one for you there, and this is me giving myself a bit of advice really, because I need to prioritize this more, is sleep. Because I think, and this is another thing that I heard from Chris Williamson. I know we plug him a lot on this, but he talked about, like, you don't really have any right to look at your mental health as a problem if you're not sleeping. And if you're some people, all the things, the crisis in confidence, you have people being low, people with anxious, people with mental health issues, people with lack of clarity. All of these things can be fixed by a good night's sleep. I'm not saying that you get a 6, and not just 1 or 2 good nights sleep, like consistently. And I'm not saying that's gonna all of a sudden you're gonna know what you want, but like when you go for a walk and you come back and all of a sudden you have that clear answer to your problem. If you're not sleeping, every day is like that. So you trying to fight for clarity is getting you more cluttered because you're just trying to force.
Exactly. That's such a big thing. It's so underrated, and it's still one of the guys in Paul Moore's Alliance. He's an amazing guy. He's really got his head screwed on. He's in phenomenal shape. He pretty much calls himself like a sleep optimization coach. And so most of his posts are about the importance of sleep and how sleep's affecting your life mentally, hormonally, especially as a man. And you read some of the comments and some of the pushback against this guy who is just telling people to sleep more is ridiculous and completely unwarranted. Where we're almost in a society now where it's still cool to not sleep. Okay, I get that in your 20s, but you've got boundless energy in your 20s. Okay, you're still going to fuck yourself up long term if you don't sort your sleep out. But once you get into your 30s, especially in your 40s, you have to place priority on that because, okay, take away the biological elements, the neurotransmitters, the hormone production, it's going to make you less of an irritable prick. Yeah. It's going to make you more focused towards getting what you say you want. It's going to make your sex better.
Do you know what, I don't know if I actually came up with this analogy or I heard this from someone. If I have, I don't remember who I heard it from, so apologies for not quoting you. But everyone thinks when they stay up late to work hard on something, you are gaining more hours in the day. You're not. You are just borrowing more hours from tomorrow, and they will charge interest.
It's huge. That's huge.
And the interest is a huge bit because you're not borrowing and you get them back. You borrow hours tomorrow, you feel worse.
I love that. That's your quote. I don't care if someone else actually said it beforehand. You claim it. I'm going to put that in an email to my list later and put Simon Dutton underneath. It's huge. That's absolutely huge.
I will WhatsApp it you so you know when we finish the episode. On that note, I've got to shoot. But thank you, man. This is really good. We'll definitely come back next week talking about clarity. I think that's really important. And I will message you that quote. But thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Rob, again for these. I'm generally becoming one of my favorite parts of the week is doing this. And I will see you next week. We need to change the day because it's Ellie's birthday. Just to let you know. I'll see you at some point next week.
Birthday episode.
Get Ellie on. Right. Thank you.
Awesome, my man. Thank you.